along the way. So the impact of inflation on the financial markets. As always, I'm going to be sharing my Zoom slide with you guys so that you can as well see and then relate to it. So you can even make screenshots of the Zoom slides. It depends on your choice. Depends on you totally. Okay, I'm doing the sharing right now. The impact of inflation on the financial markets. Okay, let me quickly admit more people in. Okay, great. The impact of inflation on the financial markets. This topic was chosen based on the fact that currently in the world there is inflation, and that inflation is having impacts, in fact, great impact on the financial markets, be it cryptocurrency, be it forex, be it stock markets, whatever market you are trading, there is an impact of inflation. You are definitely going to feel that impact, but you might not know you are feeling it. You might not know you are feeling the impact. You might not know you are feeling it. So tonight, that is what we are going to be discussing. We are going to be looking at a little bit of macroeconomics, which affects the cryptocurrency market or the financial market at large. These things are part of fundamental analysis. Normally, they are part of fundamental analysis, and they are very important part of it. Fundamental analysis is not just about looking at how well a coin is performing or how well the company is performing. It is also looking at how the financial or economic condition of the world is, of countries are. So that too is part of it. Now, we're going to start with the first question. What is inflation? What is inflation? I know a lot of us will have known this simple definition from our secondary schools, or maybe some of us that studies courses that are related to economics, in school. And then we are going to know this simple to know inflation, where they will tell you that inflation is where plenty money is chasing few goods. It is very, very true. In inflation, plenty money chases few goods. So the definition I have here is inflation is the rate of increase in prices over a given period of time. Increase in prices of goods, of services, of commodities over a given period of time. Now, inflation is typically a broad measure, such as the overall increase in price or the increase in goods or services. So the point I'm trying to pass across here is that inflation is not just only affecting one product. It is the overall increase. When there is inflation happens to the prices of commodities in general. When you're buying something in the market, you're buying your phone, your phone that cost 230,000 naira before, now it is 300,000 naira. Even up to matches. Honestly, things are getting expensive. There is inflation, not only in Nigeria, in the world. Not only, it's just that Nigeria own is a special kind of inflation, honestly. So Nigeria own is more than the rest of the world, definitely now. Everything is just upside down over here. So inflation is affecting the world, is also affecting Nigeria. So the inflation we are looking at right here is going to be putting more references on the United States, because that is where, like, the center of economic, that is the center of economics. Okay, let me admit more people in now. Okay, you all are welcome. You're welcome to Crypto Based Media. We've not really done much, so you can still do a lot of catch up. You can still get everything I'm trying to say and pass across. Okay, so let's continue. So I was saying, when inflation happens, your purchasing power reduces. Something that you were able to get for $1 last year, it is now $1.5. The price has increased. Flights before in Nigeria, normally flights that are not even up to 50,000 naira are now for 70,000 naira. For an hour flight. Very expensive. That is an example of inflation. That is when inflation hits. The price of goods, commodities, services, everything just shoots up. That is what happens in inflation. So now that we've known the background of inflation, now let us look at the common activities or the common consequences of inflation, which I call what happens during inflation. What happens during inflation? Now, I've mentioned some of them, but I'm still going to put more emphasis. Now, the first one is increase in product price. It is very normal. The price of products are going to shoot up. You know, what you can get for $5 before is going to increase to $7, $8. What you get for 50,000 naira before is now 70,000, 80,000. In fact, the food we consume is a good example. The food we consume is a good example. You know, a bag of rice from 18,000, 20 something thousand, 30 something thousand, I had around 39 to 40 something thousand. So that is inflation. And trust me, when inflation happens, it hits everybody. No matter who you are, inflation hits everybody. But the fact is that there are some people that have edge over inflation. If you're a crypto trader, trust me, you have edge over inflation. But I'm still coming to that side. I'm still coming to that part because that side is also a very consequence of inflation. The next consequence is increase in production cost, increase in cost of production. When the raw materials that you're using to produce are now getting expensive, trust me, the price of your product is also going to get expensive because you don't want to lose. Businesses won't even want to lose. Now, if let's say, is it Dangote, if they sell a bag of cement, I don't really know how much a bag of cement is right now, but if they sell a bag of cement for 2,000 naira formally, and then let's say the cost of production, the transportation and everything, even to the wages that they pay the workers, if the wages that they pay the workers increase, that is part of the cost of inflation increasing. So if something like that happens, you can be sure that the price of cement can even shoot up to 5,000 naira. Why? Because the cost of production has increased. And what is the root cause of this? It is inflation. It is inflation. That is what happens during inflation. Now, the next thing is inflation lowers a currency value. It lowers a currency value. Now, I like the fact that our country is like a good example to use to cite inflation, because the people in the United States that are complaining of inflation, they don't really know how, the inflation is not the same compared to Nigeria. If you are currently in Nigeria, I don't know if you are overseas or abroad, but if you are currently in Nigeria, that inflation, in fact, is a different thing here. And I know a lot of you can bear testimonies to this. Now, okay, let me see if there are more people. Okay, great. Admitting more people. So inflation is something more harder here than it is over there. So normally worldwide, inflation is worldwide. In fact, if I get to the point where I mention the numbers of the rates of inflation, you guys will be, wow, so this will have inflation as much as this. You feel like, wow, that's crazy. So inflation, you can see, is a very clear example in Nigeria. Our naira is definitely going down. Why? Because there's inflation. There is not enough goods. There is increase in price of products. So that is what inflation is. But I'm not even going to go into those deep economic terms because me myself, I don't really know about economics. So let's just keep it simple and straightforward. Now, what inflation does again is that inflation increases interest rates. Now, we can see this with the United States interest rates increasing month by month. That interest rate is increasing. And don't worry, I'm still going to come to this interest rate, because when we are talking about inflation, we can't leave out interest rates. This is like a very, very important part of inflation, or a very, very important topic when we are discussing inflation. Now, the next thing that happens is inflation raises cost of living. Come on. Cost of living, cost of even renting houses. When you want to rent a house, the price that you rent it 5 years ago won't be the same price that you rent it now. Or if the inflation continues, it's going to be the same price that you rent it in the next 2 or 3 or 5 years. So that is what inflation does to our economy. Inflation is not a good thing. It is a really bad thing. Now, we've looked at the impacts of inflation generally. Now, we are also going to look at the impacts of inflation on cryptocurrency and the financial markets, which is like the most important thing that we are all here for. That is the most important thing that we are all here for. So, inflation in its worst, that's supposed to be worse. Inflation in its worst. What does it really mean? Like hyperinflation. When we have hyperinflation, what does hyperinflation mean? Well, hyperinflation, let me just start by defining hyperinflation. Hyperinflation is a term to describe a rapid, excessive, and out of control general price increase in an economy. It's a general price increase that is out of control. That is what hyperinflation is. When I say something is hyper, you can be sure that hyper is harder, is more thicker than inflation itself. It's like an excessive increase in the cost of products, is out of control general price increase in an economy. Normally inflation is just like increase in price of products, but hyperinflation is like super inflation. It's like the larger part of inflation. It's like the bigger part of inflation. Now, there are countries around the world that are also facing hyperinflation. There are countries around the world. For example, I was watching a video about Venezuela yesterday. Okay, let me see if I can admit more people in. Okay, great. So I was watching a video about Venezuela yesterday. Someone posted that video on Twitter, and the person was saying, may Nigeria's inflation never get to this extent, because if it gets to that extent, it will be super finished. So it's just like a short documentary. It's like a short documentary whereby the guy there doing the interview and everything, the guy puts like, let's say, if I'm going to look at that money in Naira, not the real value of the money, but if you're looking at the stack of that money, it's about, you are putting like 1,000 Naira notes, and let's say it's like 300,000 Naira all together on the table. And then the guy puts a cup of coffee on the table. Now, the guy was saying that this coffee is equivalent to the price, to the amount of this money, that as much as this money is, that as much as this paper is, they are so worthless that they can only afford a cup of coffee, just a cup of coffee. Their inflation over there is very, very crazy. It is hyperinflation, very crazy. In fact, their inflation eats to the extent that there is shortage of money. Like, there is not enough money. You see people queuing at the bank. There's not enough cash. And if you want to get cash, you use money to buy that cash. The interviewer was going about, and then he saw on social media where you can buy cash from another Venezuelan citizen who sells that currency, that cash, and the guy was saying all of the money that is arranged. I wish I can just play that video right now, but I don't even have access to it. The guy was saying all of the money that is arranged on the table. I don't know if any of you have seen that video, but the guy was saying all of the money arranged on the table is barely $4. Imagine that. It's barely $4. And I'm very sure if you look at that money, if that money is in Naira, like 1,000 Naira, the money is about 1.5 million Naira altogether. And the guy was saying, okay, this stack of cash are just paper and almost worthless, that they are not even up to $4. That is what hyperinflation is. That is what hyperinflation means. Now, you've known inflation in its worst scenario, and then we pray that we never get to this extent in the world. Something like this happens sometimes in the war, when there is war and everything, when the world is at war. So that is when hyperinflation also happens. But there are countries that are facing hyperinflation, and then I've given you a good example, which is Venezuela. Now, let's look at the next thing. Which is the impact inflation has on crypto and other financial markets. The impact inflation has on crypto and other financial markets. The impact it has. Now, since money is no longer easy to find, there is no excess cash flow. We defined inflation as where there is high price of goods, high price of goods and everything. Now, let me first start with how did I miss these points? Okay, how government curbs inflation. I think that is supposed to come before the impact inflation has on cryptocurrency and other financial markets. Now, let me just do that ASAP. How government curbs inflation. So when there is inflation, especially in the United States, their own central bank is called Feds, the Federal Reserve. That is their own Feds. Those are the people that print money, those are the people that print money. And these people, this is how they curb inflation. This is how they curb inflation. The old meeting called FOMC meeting every month, and then they are going to review the state of inflation and decide whether to increase or reduce interest rates. So these people deal with the interest rates. It is the tool that they use to control inflation. Now, this is how interest rates works in controlling inflation. Now, if there is inflation, if inflation is high in an economy, they can increase the interest rate so that the inflation is going to get balanced or the inflation is going to reduce. That is what it is. Now, what does increasing interest rates means? Increasing interest rates means increasing the amount or the percentage of interest on cash borrowing. Normally central bank or the Federal Reserves are going to lend money out to banks, and then these banks are going to in turn lend money out to business owners, individuals, and people like that. Now, they notice that inflation is when there is excess cash flow in when there is excess cash flow in the economy. Now, they are looking for ways to reduce and cut this cash flow so that there can be more production, So automatically, when the cash flow is being reduced from the economy, then the price are going to stabilize, things are going to continue like that. So how do they now achieve these things? They are going to increase the interest rates. Once they increase the interest rates, the prices are going to get reduced. Why? Because businesses can now find it difficult to access money. Their access to money is now going to be difficult. It is going to be difficult to borrow money. That is how they curb inflation. That is the measure that they use to curb inflation. Now, I think, was it Wednesday or Thursday? I can't really remember. Or was it Friday? I think it was Friday when FOMC had their last meeting very, very recently. You guys can see that Bitcoin pumped as at that time. But normally when such things happen and we hear that they've increased the interest rate again, Bitcoin normally usually is going to dump. Why? Because it's a bad news for Bitcoin and the financial markets. We're still going to get to that point later. But this, for you to know, I'm just breaking it down for you guys, that the government curb inflation by increasing interest rates. That is what they do. When they increase the interest rates, getting money becomes hard, because there's excess cash flow. Now they're trying to cut that cash flow. Now getting money is going to become harder for businesses. So that is what they do to curb inflation. It's like using fire to kill fire, that kind of measure. So that is what they do. Now they increase these interest rates by percentage points, basis points, not a full percentage. They can increase this by 0.75 basis point. When they tell you the interest rate hike is 0.75 BP basis points, when you say something 0.75, that is how they've been increasing the interest rates, and that is how they've been curbing the inflation. Now, okay, that is how the government does their thing. Now, let's take a look at the impact that this inflation has on cryptocurrency and other financial markets. Automatically when there is inflation, especially in the United States, and then it affects the stock markets, it is going to in turn affect Bitcoin. Now, this is what happens. Normally they are cutting, they are looking for a way to make it harder to borrow money. They're looking for ways to make it harder to borrow money through the interest rates. Now, through that same interest rates, when it is harder for companies to borrow money, they don't have enough cash, they don't have enough liquidity to do businesses. Even people that just borrow money to buy houses, to get this, get that before. They don't do that anymore. Why? Because they don't have easy access to that cash, because the interest rates they are going to be paying if they borrow is much. That is just the simple explanation to it. The interest rate is already much, so that means they are not going to have easy access to cash. So automatically, if any one of them or any businesses, if they have money in an investment, you can be sure that at that particular time that there's inflation, they will go and liquidate their money, even if it is in a loss. Even if it is in a loss. The same thing happens to Tesla recently. Just this month, they announced that they sold 75% of their Bitcoin since the second quarter of 2022. Imagine that. Why do you think Tesla sold 75% of their Bitcoin? It is simply because there's inflation. If you read that report very well, it summarizes that there's inflation. They are liquidating so that they can have enough access to liquidity to keep the company running. And not only Tesla, a lot of companies have been doing this. A lot of companies, they have been doing this, selling their Bitcoin, some liquidating, some even going bankrupt. Even a lot of funds, a lot of investment funds have been doing that. So that is what inflation does to the market. You see how the market is currently down? The reason is inflation. That's like the simplest. So I said Tesla liquidated 75% of their Bitcoin. You are going to see other investment funds doing that. Even some crypto exchanges, they are at the verge of doing that. Even Coinbase / their workforce, all of them just looking for ways to survive in the bear market. They are looking for ways to survive in the bear market. Now, this is like macroeconomics affecting Bitcoin, macroeconomics affecting cryptocurrency. And this is the result of inflation on the financial markets. In inflation, since there's not enough capital, there's not enough cash on ground, businesses and even individuals, they'll be looking for ways to survive in the markets. They'll be looking for ways to survive. How can we survive? How can we keep on paying our staffs? When they can't pay interest, that's when you see those company layoffs, those company laid off again. So those company, in fact, if I be counting crypto companies that have laid off, or even normal companies that have laid off during these bear markets, I'll still be counting about 5 to 6 to 7, honestly, because that is the result of a market downturn, which is as a result of inflation. So that is how it happens, guys. That is what inflation does to businesses, to individuals. When it gets to that point whereby you don't have excess cash, it is when you have extra cash you think of investing. If there's no extra cash, we even think of investing. When the cash you have with you is just for your survival, for the basic survival, so that you can feed your family, so that you can do this, so that you can have a shelter, so that you can have a home that you get into, so that you can have a car that you drive, so that you can fuel your car. That is survival. That is survival. When people are now living for survival, and then it touches everything from businesses to companies to individuals. It touches everything. Once that inflation occurs, it is definitely going to affect everything, even to the price of even to the wages of staffs. It affects everything totally, because the staffs are let's say you own a company, for instance, and then you've been giving your staffs, let's say 50,000 naira before. Now, since there's inflation, these people are going to complain to you, oh, there's no this cash you are giving us is no longer enough to service our needs. It's no longer enough. They're already complaining that because the price of goods they are getting, because these people, this is your staff, they're also going to get normal thing just like you. They are going to the normal market just like everyone else. Things are not cheaper in their own markets. Things are the same in the market. So that is why you see the effect. You see that people are just trying to survive during inflation. So there's not enough cash to put to investment. That is why financial markets are currently down. That is the reason. So even people that already have money in investment, they will now be thinking of, man, let me remove my money. No matter the losses that they've even made in that investments. A lot of people in the beginning, when they want to invest, say, okay, my company wants to invest $100 million in Bitcoin. From the beginning, when everything is flourishing, there's enough money. You feel, okay, I'm going to leave this money to, let's say, 10 years, 20 years to come, and then it's still going to be there. But when inflation hits, business is standing on one leg, no longer balanced, they'll not be thinking, I have one funds, one place, they'll not be forced to liquidate. That is what happens. They'll be forced to liquidate. And mostly those liquidation happens in losses. It happens in losses. So that is how it is, guys. That is the impact inflation has on crypto and other financial markets. Now, going on, I've talked about how governments curb inflation, the measures that they take to curb inflation. It's like increasing interest rates so that everything is going to normalize and everything is going to get balanced. Now, one thing I didn't mention is that if is it deflation? Yes, if there's deflation also, the Feds, what they are going to also do is that they are going to, deflation means that there is low price, prices of goods and services is too low. The supply is now more than the demand. The supply is now more than the demand in deflation. So what they are also going to do is that they are going to release money into the market. They will release money into the markets by reducing the interest rates of borrowing, of lending and borrowing. They're going to reduce the interest rates. In fact, there are some times that interest rates have been reduced to almost zero, like 0.01%, that you return the same amount that you borrowed with just maybe little change with it. That is just it. Okay, moving on to the next one. The big question, is crypto still an edge against inflation? There's this popular thing that this saying even made a lot of people have more interest in cryptocurrency, because we say cryptocurrency is an edge against inflation. You won't think of inflation when you're trading cryptocurrency or when you're earning in dollars or all of that. Now, the fact is that it is true, yes, when there's a bullish market, you're earning in dollars, everything is flourishing, is an edge against inflation. But what most people don't understand is that it depends on how you control your funds during a bullish market, that will determine whether that edge is actually working for you. Imagine you losing all of your gains and your profits back to the market. Imagine you losing all of your gains and profit back to the market. You won't even follow them to say crypto is an edge against inflation, because you'll be feeling the inflation. Why? Because all those gains, you didn't protect it. You didn't lock all those gains. You didn't lock all those profits. So they've gone with the bullish markets. So truly, cryptocurrency is an edge against inflation. And now this is why it is even more edge right now, because if you buy cryptocurrency right now and we finally get this inflation and this economic problem solved, man, you'll be winning in the long run, because money is going to flow back into the financial market. That is it. Once money starts circulating again, it's going to flow back into the financial markets. That's it. Now, another thing that I didn't mention is the inflation rates in some countries right now. For example, in Nigeria, we are still dealing with 18% inflation rates, and in the United States, they are dealing with around 9.1% inflation rate, and that is high. Honestly, trust me, it is high. It's high. But Nigeria, normally our own case is special. So our own case is special. We just pray that our own case is not going to get into hyperinflation. You see, when hyperinflation happens, you can have 50% inflation, 50% additional inflation increase in a month. 50%. We are still seeing small percentage increase, 1%, 0.75% increase in a month and all of that. But if hyperinflation hits, you can see 50% increase suddenly in a month. Price of things will just shoot up unnecessarily, and then the value of the currency is going to come down. There'll be currency devaluation. Now, also in the United Kingdom, the inflation rate is 9.4%. So these are like the notable countries to show you that truly there's inflation. Even in Turkey, I think, is there hyperinflation in Turkey, or is just high inflation? I can't really recall or remember, but I know there's inflation in Turkey. I know there's inflation in Turkey also. There's inflation in Turkey also. So that is it. Cryptocurrency is still an edge against inflation. That is if you have cryptos right now, or if you are planning to buy cryptocurrencies, you can as well edge yourself against inflation. Now, guys, let me know Let me know if you are learning. If you have any questions, send them in. Let me know if you are really learning. So that is it, guys. That is it. We've come to an end of this Zoom session. So thank you all for coming and have great weekends ahead.